Hello everyone, my name is Saumya, Assistant Professor, Jagannath University, Jaipur. Today we are going to discuss on the topic barriers to effective communication and their management. Communication, as already discussed, is a process through which two or more people exchange information, ideas, thoughts, emotions in such a way that each gain a common understanding of the intended message. It is a dynamic concept. In communication system, 35% message is carried verbally and rest of the 65% non-verbally. Communication is the process of sending and receiving messages between parties. But what are the barriers for effective communication? Barriers to communication. There are certain barriers to communication which may hinder its effectiveness. They are of many types. When we have a sender, we have a receiver, and through a medium and channel we convey our message and the feedback is received. Anything which hinders our process is called the barrier. The idea occurs, message is coded, the message is sent, the message is received, the message is decoded, and the idea is understood. But in between, anything which makes this communication complicated becomes its lack of commonness is a barrier. A barrier to interpersonal communications is anything that prevents, restricts, or impedes the conveyance of meaning by words or gestures between two or more persons in a social setting. The term barrier, obstacles, hindrances, and noise are all used to describe the distracting stimuli associated with the communication process. Absence of defined role of any component creates a barrier. There are different types of effective communication barriers, which we will learn in the further session. Communicating to the receiver at a wrong time or inconvenient time can be a barrier. The message communicated is distorted, that is, change in the meaning of the message due to noise or some reason. Noise is termed as the change that is introduced in the message so that its meaning does not remain what was intended by the source. Information overload is yet another barrier, as every individual has a limited attention span during which he or she is receptive to communication messages. Besides technical barriers, there are also language and psychological barriers to communication. Language barriers may be of two types: vocabulary, where use of difficult words that the receiver may not understand, and semantics, when the meaning of the message is not clear to the audience or what the audience understands is different from what the source may. Psychological barriers may include these factors. Noise. Sometimes, when the student in the class is thinking of an India Pakistan cricket match that is to take place that evening, what the teacher is talking may be noise to him. Alternately, any disturbance in the frequency of a radio channel can create disturbance, and the audience may not be able to hear what is being broadcast. Perception set differences. Over a period of time, individuals build a certain tendency to perceive a message in a certain way. For example, some people believe what advertisements claim about a certain product as their experiences with it may be positive. Alternately, there may be others who may not believe such messages, as their experience with the same product or service may not be satisfactory. This tendency is called perception set. Due to difference in experiences, value systems, beliefs, and social realities of individuals, difference in perception set will always exist, due to which a message may not have the same effect on all individuals. Lack of trust and jealousy. These may also be the reason why a message may not have a desired effect on the audience. Information filtering. The receivers have a tendency to accept only those messages that they find are of interest to them or reinforce the notions and beliefs that they already have. They filter such information and leave out the rest, thereby becoming another psychological barrier. Barriers to effective communication can retard or distort the message and intention of the message being conveyed, which may result in failure of the communication process or an effect that is undesirable. These include filtering, selective perception, information overload, emotions, language, silence, communication apprehension, gender differences, and political correctness. This also includes a lack of expressing knowledge appropriate communication, which occurs when a person uses ambiguous or complex legal words, medical jargon, or descriptions of a situation or environment that is not understood by the recipient. Social barriers. Social barriers include gender, age, race, national or cultural origin, socio-economic class, education level, urban or rural residence. Gender. Major Gender is the major influence on the way communication with others is done. When men and women work together in a group, men tend to be more assertive and self-confident. Women are more likely than men to express their emotions, to reveal how they feel about a situation. The next factor is age. Young people and old people communicate in different ways. We do tend to judge a statement by different standards if we know the speaker's age. A person's age or gender is not important in judging the truth or wisdom of what that person says. It also depends on their maturity, their educational backgrounds, and the different areas in which they grew up, making a generation gap inevitable. The purpose of communication is it is informative, it provides information, it is entertaining, it provides entertainment, and it is persuasive. Social noise, subjective factors. Human relation, personal preferences overshadow the objectivity of the communication. Boys or girls, friends or enemies, or nice people. Try to ensure the objectivity, do not get dragged by subjective factors. Psychological barriers. Attitude towards self fear, attitude towards audience, attitude towards the message. You yourself is not convinced with the subject, knowledge of subject, personality or status of the communicator. These barriers are often due to the nature of the environment. An example of this is the nature barrier, which exists if staff are located in different buildings or on different sites. Likewise, poor or outdated equipment, particularly the failure of management to introduce new technology, may also cause problems. Staff shortages are another factor which frequently causes communication difficulties for an organization, while distractions like background noise, poor lighting, or an environment which is too hot or too cold can all affect people's morale and concentration, which in turn interfere with effective communication. System design faults refers to problems with the structures or systems in place in an organization. Examples might include an organizational structure which is unclear and therefore makes it confusing to know whom to communicate with. Other examples could be inefficient or inappropriate information systems, a lack of supervision or training, and a lack of clarity in roles and responsibilities, which can lead to staff being uncertain about what is expected of them. Attitudinal barriers. Attitudinal barriers come about as a result of problems with staff in an organization. These may be brought about, for example, by such factors as poor management, lack of consultation with employees, personality conflicts, which can result in people delaying or refusing to communicate, the personal attitudes of individual employees, which may be due to lack of motivation or dissatisfaction at work brought about by insufficient training to enable them to carry out particular tasks or just resistance to change due to entrenched attitudes and ideas. Ambiguity of words or phrases. Words sounding the same but having different meaning can convey a different meaning altogether. Hence, the communicator must ensure that the receiver receives the same meaning. It is better if such words are avoided by using alternatives whenever possible. Our physical limitations are a screen through which we perceive things that exist in our environment. Our perception is also limited by psychological screens that we have developed. Choosing from among the many things within our range of perception those that we will notice and block out the rest is called selective perception. Selective perception allows us not only to block out things that are there but also to see more things than are there. It leads us to make our own reality. It is most clearly seen in the human tendency to stereotype others. A motive is a reason for action. The most strongest motivations are those that are most personal. We are motivated by money, fame, power, love, status, security, skill, ambition, etc. It can be both positive or negative. Tunnel vision. It is a closed way of thinking, especially about abstract topics such as religion and politics. The person with tunnel vision is one who has firmly fixed ideas. The opposite side is open mindedness. Person with tunnel vision has attitude seems to say, I have already made up my mind. Don't confuse me with the facts. And this also becomes a barrier. Ego defensiveness, a response pattern in which a person who follows this pattern sees a disagreement as a personal attack. A self centered communication, and it is more than just being selfish. Negative emotions. Almost always obstacles to good communication, especially true barrier if the emotion is uncontrolled, unfocused, or misdirected. Other psychological barriers. These may result from individuals' personal discomfort caused, for example, by ill health, poor eyesight, or hearing difficulties. People's state of mind, if whether they are happy or sad, their personal problems and their worries, preconceived notions of communicator or the receiver, mental limitations of human beings, failure to refer language to experience, and the confusion of concept. This all also lead to the barrier of communication. communication. Attitudinal barriers come about as a result of problems with staff in an organization. These may be brought about, for example, by such factors as poor management, lack of consultation with employees, personality conflicts, which can result in people delaying or refusing to communicate, the personal attitudes of individual employees, which may be due to lack of motivation or dissatisfaction at work, brought about by insufficient training to enable them to carry out particular tasks, or just resistance to change due to entrenched attitudes and ideas. Ambiguity of words or phrases. Words sounding the same but having different meaning can convey a different meaning altogether. Hence, the communicator must ensure that the receiver receives the same meaning. It is better if such words are avoided by using alternatives wherever possible. Individual linguistic ability. The use of jargon, difficult or inappropriate words in communication can prevent the recipient from understanding the messages. Poorly explained or misunderstood messages can also result in confusion. However, research in communication has shown that confusion can lend legitimacy to research when persuasion fails. Physiological barriers. These may result from individuals' personal discomfort caused, for example, by ill health, poor eyesight, or hearing difficulties. Communication noise. In any communication model, noise is interference with the decoding of messages sent over a channel by an encoder. There are many examples of noise. Environmental noise. That A noise that physically disrupts communication, such as standing next to loudspeakers at a party or the noise from a construction site next to a classroom, making it difficult to hear the professor. Physiological impairment noise. Physical maladies that prevent effective communication, such as actual deafness or blindness, preventing messages from being received as they were intended. Semantic noise. Different interpretations of the meaning of certain words. For example, the word weed can be interpreted as an undesirable plant in a yard or as a euphemism for marijuana. Syntactical noise. Mistakes in grammar can disrupt communication, such as abrupt changes in verb tense during a sentence. Organizational noise. Poorly structured communication can prevent the receiver from accurate interpretation. For example, unclear and badly stated directions can make the receiver even more lost. Cultural noise. Stereotypical assumption can cause misunderstandings, such as unintentionally offending a non Christian person by wishing them a Merry Christmas. Psychological noise. Certain attitudes can also make communication difficult. For instance, great anger or sadness may cause someone to lose focus on the present moment. Disorders such as autism may also severely hamper effective communication. Cultural barriers. Semantic problems, distortion in communication comes from semantics. The use of words or expressions which have a different meaning for the sender or receiver, created when communicators use technical jargon usage common to a particular field or specialization. Language. Different language, dialect, individual linguistic ability, use of difficult words, inappropriate words, pronunciation, norms and values, beliefs, social practices, and traditions also become a part of cultural barriers. Individual personal discomfort, ill health, poor eyesight, hearing difficulties, speech and voice defect, feeling of inferiority, diseases, physical appearance, lack of skill altogether make physiological barriers. System design. Organizational structure which is unclear to whom to communicate, insufficient or inappropriate information system is there. Information is overloaded. A lack of clarity in roles and responsibilities is there. A lack of supervision or training is there. Comes under system. The distortion of message in any kind of loss, deformation, mispresentation, or alteration taken place in original message while sending it to the audience. Types of distortion are systematic distortion, fog distortion, mirage distortion. Systematic distortion purposely changed. Fog distortion, the information is lost. Mirage distortion, it is extra or the unwanted information. Differences in communications are likely to parallel the differences in power. Imbalance or asymmetry in negotiating power leads the high power party to perform significantly better than the low power party. Physical barriers, channel. Availability of channel to receiver, known as the common channel. The choice of channel is done. Handling of channel by the communicator. The reach depending on size of audience, mic, etc. Noise level in channel. Presentation or information, message ka treatment, muddled messages. The climate. Extremely climate temperature like very hot or cold, or the light bright or dim, humidity high, discomfort, distractions. It occurs where people are constantly coming in and leaving for one reason or another and experience the frustration that is created by the distracting traffic. Distractions. Noise of co-workers, doors or etc. can be a barrier too. Photographer, any announcements, instruction sheets, tea, coffee, latecomers. These all become the distractions in any event and can be a barrier in communication. Physical setting of classroom or lecture hall, the sitting arrangement, audio aids. The receiver, if his absenteeism or he is daydreaming or pretending to listening can also become a barrier. Strayers, they constantly take the group off the track. They drag the discussion out of the context and it becomes a barrier. Gabbers. Gabbers are the people who like to talk first and try to dominate in the discussion. They think that they are the only ones with anything worth saying. They miscommunicate the information and become a barrier. The silent ones. They are just as well informed as many other members of the group, but they rarely contribute verbally. They are the silent members of the group and as a receiver can miscommunicate the information. Listening without observing speaker's tone, gesture, posture, and facial expression is like getting the words of a song without music. Relating to receiver, problem of homogeneity. The more homogeneous the audience is, the greater are the chances for successful communication. Problems of cooperation and involvement. The listeners must cooperate and get actively involved in the communication process. They must try to get tuned together with the communicator. Negative attitude of the audience towards the communicator. If the audience has negative attitude for the communicator or if the credibility of the communicators as perceived by the audience is low, no successful communication will take place. Problems in communication relating to transmission of message. Wrong handling of the channel. If the channels selected for communication are not handled effectively, their potential for carrying a message will be dissipated. Wrong selection of channels. If the channel selected is not in accordance with the objective or subject, interpretation will not be in a desired way. Use of inadequate channels in parallel. For the message to have got through and received properly, use of more than one channel in parallel or at about the same time is essential. Physical distraction. Failure to avoid physical distraction often obstructs successful sending of the message. Here are some points to remember. Communication is a two-way process. Effective communication is equal to bridging the gap between encoded and decoded message, establishing common understanding. Responsibility of effective communication mainly lies with the communicator. Feedback is an important return message. Ensure getting and using it effectively for better performance. Know the roadblocks. This will help you to handle the communication process in an effective way. Use your heart and mind and soul for an effective result. And lastly, communication is a skill. It is to be learned and practiced thoroughly. To become an effective communicator, make effective use of your heart and body, your mind and soul. That's all for today. In the coming sessions, we'll learn more about the communication. Thank you, everyone.